starting.
Evening, Chair. Just to confirm, the live stream is now up and running. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. So, as usual, I'll start with some housekeeping rules. Can I remind everyone present that this remote meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? And if a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand using the remote raise hand function? If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to speak by myself, could they turn their camera on to indicate that they want to speak, or place a message in the chat function? And when invited to address by the chair, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera are on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this isn't possible for any reason, please just bring that to my attention or to a Democratic Services officer as soon as possible. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function should be used to highlight any technical issues and to get my attention as chair or Democratic Services. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they're addressing the committee, then again, please let myself or an officer know. So please can I welcome all committee and non-committee elected members, any co-opted representatives who are joining us, cabinet members and our officers, as well as Vale residents. And to anyone watching the live meeting broadcast to this first meeting of the new Place Scrutiny Committee on Tuesday, the 20th of May. Moving straight onto the agenda and beginning with the appointment of Vice Chair, do we have any nominations for Vice Chair, please? Councillor Ernest?
Yes, Chairman, I'd like to nominate Councillor Charles Champion. I believe he would make an excellent Vice Chairman of the committee and will work very well, not only with yourself, but all other colleagues on the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second that as well, Chair. Councillor Driscoll.
Thank you, Councillor Driscoll. Any other nominations, please, Councillor Stallard?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Councillor Catherine Iannucci, please. She's done a great job as Vice Chair of this committee, so I think she should carry on.
Thank you. Councillor Drake? Thank you very much. So are there any other nominations for Vice Chair, please? No, in that case, we have two nominations who've been seconded, so we will move to a vote. Mark, can you take us through that, please?
Okay, thanks, Chair. What we'll need to do is obviously go for the list of candidates, so we'll do it in the order of nomination. So we'll do a vote first for Councillor Charles Champion. I'll just check with my colleague now if we can set up a vote for that.
Thank you, Mark. Yep, the vote is set up and ready to go whenever the chair is happy.
Okay, over to you then, Chair. When you're ready, we'll start the vote.
Yes, please. So, members, you will see that there is a live vote appearing on your screen, and you are able to vote for Councillor Champion, against Councillor Champion, or abstain. The vote is live, so please go ahead. Thank you.
And just let members know if they have any problems with the voting system, then I would suggest, Chair, perhaps they give a verbal vote if they want to.
All the votes have been cast, Chair.
Thank you. And what was the outcome of the votes?
Are you able to? Oh, there we are. Matt's kindly shared that with us now, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we have 6 votes for Councillor Champion and 7 votes against. So that Vote is not carried. And can we now move, please, to a vote for Councillor Catherine Iannucci-Williams? Thank you.
Matt, if you can just pop up again and let us know when that's ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just setting up the vote now, so it'll be live on your screen in just a moment.
Thank you very much. So once again, councillors, you'll see the vote live on your screens. The vote is for, against or abstaining in relation to Councillor Iannucci-Williams. Please go ahead and vote. Do we have an outcome from that, please, Matt? Yes, thank you. Thank you. So we have 7 votes for Councillor Iannucci-Williams, 5 against and 1 abstention. So that vote is passed. Congratulations, Councillor Iannucci-Williams, on your appointment as Vice Chair of this new placed Scrutiny Committee. And can I pass my thanks to Councillor Champion? Thank you for your willingness to serve in that capacity, Councillor. So we move on now.
That as well, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ennis. We move on now to apologies for absence. Do we have any, please?
I believe we have a full complement of members, elected members in attendance, Chair. Just to let you know, some other apologies. We have one from Mr. Oshan Carroll, who is our representative from Citizens Advice. We also have apologies from Mrs. Gina Doyle and Mr. Glyn Niblett, who are both tenant representatives as well.
Thank you very much, Mark. Members, because we're all online tonight, I'm conscious that once we have a vote, what can sometimes happen is when you look at your screen on the right-hand side, it just says voting is ended, and you might not be able to see the list of attendees. Under your mini screen, you'll see list. If you click on that, just in case anybody's having any difficulties, if you click on that, you'll see the list of attendees, and you'll see when people raise their hands and want to speak. So we move now on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which are the minutes of the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee held on the 8th of April 2025. That was a predecessor to this committee. Are members who were members of that committee happy to approve? And if so, can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Hooper.
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. And can I have a seconder? Thank you very much, Councillor Drake. And now we move on to declarations of interest. Are there any, please? I see no hands, so we move now on to agenda item number 5. This is a notion of motion which relates to a voluntary ban on the sale and use of flying rings throughout the Vale of Glamorgan. It was referred to this committee from full council, which met on the 28th of April. And we're joined by Colin Smith, who can provide us with some information in relation to this issue. But before we do that, can I just check if Councillor Stallard, yes, do you want to address this issue, because it was your motion before council? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So it's just to remind everyone really that the whole point of this motion was to bring in a voluntary ban, which isn't something that requires enforcement or a PSPO or anything of that kind. So it's more of an appeal really to people's goodwill, an exercise in raising awareness that might ultimately provoke more consideration of the broader issue. But I'd very much like to make progress on this immediately, really, rather than have it as part of a task and finish group. And I think we'd be wise as a committee, really, to think about a bigger issue ultimately for our task and finish group. But basically, yes, I think we should crack on with taking some positive steps with the flying rings this summer if we can. And there's going to be a UK-wide campaign on the issue launched next week, actually, which might be of interest to people. But it's great that as a council, we are one of only 2 in Wales who are already taking action.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. That's really helpful. Just to remind committee members, we're going to talk about task and finish groups this evening at the end of the agenda, but it's entirely a matter for this committee which issues they want to consider as part of a task and finish group. And the resolution that came from full council was that a task and finish group looks at the powers we have as a council to promote the bylaws in relation to the issue of flying rings. My understanding is that there are no bylaws, but Colin, can I bring you in at this point? Because I think you're probably going to be able to help us to understand what might be a helpful way forward, as Councillor Stallard has already suggested. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Chair and members of the committee. So yes, Chair, I'd be, if it's okay with the committee, happy to take this away and do the appropriate research. And generally what comes to mind is working with our comms team to see if we can run some media campaigns linked to the national campaign next week, and then look at the links we have with my tourism colleagues who have email and contact addresses for all the, say, Barry Island traders. And then we would look at local shops such as Lantern Major Beach and others that we know of. And so we can raise that awareness with the traders. And as Councillor Stallard mentioned, we can't make them or force a bylaw as such. But what we can do is say we're not supporting the use of them, and would they look at alternatives should they stop them in their shops? And then as neighbourhood services, we've got links with obviously with the beach lifeguarding, all our staff across the coastal areas, and I think we can add a little bit of value to the campaign generally. So if it's okay with yourself and the committee, I'll take it away, do the research, run and coordinate the campaigns, and then I can report back to the next committee.
Thank you, Colin. Committee members, what are your thoughts on that proposed way forward? Councillor William, please. Councillor William, I can see that you're wanting to speak. At the moment, we can't see you or hear you.
Just double check, Councillor William, that your camera and microphone aren't turned off. Because obviously you've pressed the button to come on, but your camera and your microphone are not, don't seem to be working. So just double check you haven't crossed those out.
I'm afraid we're still not seeing you or hearing you, Councillor William. I can see you're trying again.
Sorry, Councillor William, if you, I don't know if it'll help, but if it's something brief, it might be just worth putting some in the chat for 5, just to see if you can, if you want to raise something. I'll also ask my colleague perhaps to give you a call. Matt, I don't know if you can give Councillor William a quick call just to troubleshoot issues he seems to be having.
Of course, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Thanks, Councillor William. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. And Councillor William, if you're able to join us on this issue, I will bring you back in. Any thoughts or comments from other committee members? Councillor Champion, please.
Yes, there were 48 votes for this at the council. So yeah, let's press on. I think probably Colin is the right person to. I think Karis had already talked to some traders, so maybe they need to liaise. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So forgive me, Councillor Champion. So are you saying you're happy with the suggestion that officers should basically get on with this and then report back to committee rather than us needing to establish a task and finish group? I just want to check.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Councillor Ernest, please.
Yes, Chairman. Can I just support the views put forward by Colin? These rings have been responsible not only for damage to animals, but they've also caused many incidents at sea where young children have used them and got washed out far further than they should be. And in terms of life-saving as well, I think that's a very sensible addition. I recognise we can't ban them at our level, but certainly I would suggest that the vast bulk of these are sold at Barry. I'm not aware of Penarth that they're on sale. I can't speak for the Ogmore and Sundown area, but I think it would be a very sensible move, and I will welcome it in terms of both personal safety as well as safety of animals at sea as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, and of course, you bring really helpful knowledge in relation to some of the impact that can have in terms of safety at sea. So very useful to have your view on this. Anything from anybody else before I draw this item to a close? Can I just check with officers whether or not we're able to bring Councillor William back in on this issue?
I was just going to ask Matt if he'd been able to get in touch. Oh, there's Councillor William coming on now. Councillor William, can you hear us? I don't know if your camera doesn't seem to be working, but I don't know if your audio is. If you can try and speak. No, I'm afraid we're still not hearing or seeing you, Councillor William. So on that basis, unless anybody else wants to speak, I will draw this item to a close. And it looks as though there is a consensus agreement that we don't need to form a task and finish group for this item, that we're content, committee is content for officers to take the issue away, to address the issue with local traders, to support the national campaign, and then to report back to committee in July, which will be very much at the heart of the summer season. So, Colin, it will be really good to hear what the response is and what actions have been taken by then. I move that as a recommendation. Can I have a seconder for that course of action, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Drake. Excellent. So we move on now to agenda item 6. This concerns the Cabinet. This is a reference from Cabinet on the Vale of Glamorgan Replacement Local Development Plan 2021 to 2036, specifically housing growth in Barry. Just to remind committee that there's already been a public consultation on the preferred strategy for the revised local development plan. So we're not here to revisit that. We're just here to consider the proposed changes to potential allocations in Barry. And we're joined by Ian Robinson, the Head of Sustainable Development. So Ian, could you take us through this agenda item, please? Welcome, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just going to talk to the report, but there's a couple of instances where it might be beneficial if Mark, I think, indicated to me before he might be able to share the growth report that was appended to the Cabinet report, just particularly where there's reference to plans and things. But yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This is a reference from Cabinet from the 1st of May relating to a proposed amendment to the already approved strategy for the replacement local development plan. I'll just run briefly through the Cabinet recommendations at the outset. The recommendations that Cabinet approved were that the Cabinet approved the document entitled Housing Growth in Barry, which was attached to that report, and refer it to the relevant Scrutiny Committee for its consideration for public consultation purposes. And then secondly, that delegated authority be granted to the head of sustainable development and or director of place to make minor changes to the document prior to consultation. And then following that a further report will be presented to Cabinet and considered by the relevant scrutiny committee and then full council to report the findings of the public consultation exercise that will then serve as part of the evidence base for the deposit replacement local development plan. So yeah, just to recap, the replacement local development plan strategy was approved at full council in September 2024 following a public consultation exercise between December 23 and February 2024. That strategy included a number of key sites across which the bulk of the identified housing growth for the Vale was identified. The report to Cabinet and the appended growth report contains an explanation of a potential change to this strategy. Now, the report summarises the key issues for consideration. It sets out the background to how we arrived at the current place, including the requirement for all councils to produce a replacement local development plan, the previous consultations and stages undertaken to get to this point, and the key components of the approved strategy. So the level of growth, where that growth was to be directed, etc. It's important to bear in mind that our LDP has to be consistent with national policy, and the Vale is designated, as previously discussed, as part of a national growth area. So we have to demonstrate compliance with that national policy by proposing a level of growth for the Vale of Glamorgan. The report goes on to describe the key considerations that led initially to the site at Argyle Lane / North East Barry being included within the strategy. However, as set out in the report, there are significant deliverability concerns now with that site, which means that officers feel there is insufficient certainty around the identified dwellings being brought forward. Consequently, the report recommends not including that site at Argyle Lane, North East Barry in the deposit plan. It wouldn't be appropriate for us to appear at examination in front of an inspector advocating for a site to meet part of our growth where we don't have commitment from landowners, don't have the necessary background work to demonstrate that the site can be delivered and in an acceptable way. So at this point, we have to consider what are the options to deal with that scenario and what is the appropriate response to deletion of the site. In the context of national policy that I've already referred to, and in the context of our approved strategy, which is based on kind of the appropriate model, levels of growth and population for the Vale, we remain in the growth area and there remains a critical affordable housing need in the Vale of Glamorgan. So the report notes that it's not considered to be a sustainable option to lower the previously identified and accepted growth level. So we need to look at where we make up that growth from deleting the North East Barry Argyle Lane site. We're of the view that the most appropriate place to deliver this remains Barry, given that it's the key settlement within the Vale. It benefits from the most comprehensive services and infrastructure and has the highest affordable housing needs, I just mentioned. So the report goes on, as members would have noted, to set out the growth options in Barry, and that includes looking at existing consented developments that we'd expect to come forward over the next plan period. It looks at an urban capacity study to potentially identify alternatives within the existing kind of scope of the town. Also looking at what might be reasonable windfall assumptions coming forward from Barry. So those are dwellings that come forward in the plan period on non-allocated sites. Also looks at rolling over some allocations from the existing LDP that haven't been permissioned or delivered yet. Mark, if you're with me, are you able to show the plan on page 10, which shows the candidate sites that we had submitted around Barry, just so members can see the full context of those?
Bear with me and I'll share my screen briefly. So page 10 in the appendix, yeah?
Thanks, Mark. What the plan shows is the location of candidate sites submitted throughout and around the perimeter of the town. And members will note they are colour-coded, which reflects kind of the initial view on the consistency of the sites with the strategy. So you can see the large green one towards the top of the plan is the site that we're proposing now be deleted. The green site towards the northwestern corner is one of the 3 sites that's being recommended to be carried forward towards this consultation. And there are 2 smaller amber sites, which one is down towards Hayes Road in the south, and the other is just under the word road by Hood Road. Members will note a number of the sites shown there as red. Those were considered to be sites where there were kind of fundamental constraints which didn't warrant them being taken any further. As previously discussed in this scrutiny committee and at council, there are a number of constraints around the edge of the town, including ecological constraints, sites of special scientific interest, ancient woodland, flood risk. So Barry is relatively constrained, and the options for trying to meet housing need, in particular in Barry, are relatively limited. So the 3 sites, in summary, have been selected for further consideration and are considered to merit a public consultation exercise to further consider their suitability for inclusion within the plan. Now, this would be a non-statutory consultation that doesn't form part of the existing delivery agreement, but is in response to this issue arising with the deliverability concerns of the aforementioned site. Now, the largest of these sites is that one at Northwest Barry. So that's the one that's in green toward the left-hand side of the plan. And that could potentially be allocated for up to 376 units. 2 smaller sites are put forward for consideration, those being the other 2 that I mentioned just now at Hayes Lane, opposite an existing recently completed council housing development, and Neptune Road adjacent to Asda. Mark, are you able to refer to the plan on page 15 for me, please?
Yes, bear with me.
Thanks, Mark. So the plans on page 15, pages 15, 16, and 18 show the 3 sites in question. 15 is slightly more detailed than the other 2 that relate to the other sites because of its scale, and because the site promoter has prepared an indicative master plan that shows kind of broadly how the site could be developed. That's shown as fairly grainy to me, but I don't know whether is anyone able to indicate if that's showing the same way for them?
Right, yeah, I'm having similar issues. I might have to stop sharing for a minute, Ian, and try and redo
Okay,
it.
That's okay, Mark. I mean, if you just leave it there for one moment, hopefully it's clear enough to show that what the master plan broadly shows is kind of residential development blocks located towards the sort of more northern part of the site, with open space and green infrastructure, adjacent to existing residential areas to the east and towards the south, with potential inclusion of a southern part within the country park. If you are, bear with me, Mark, I think there's a clearer plan which just shows the site outline in the context of the town. There's a plan on page 13. Can we just see if that is able to be shared? Oh, that's a bit clearer now. Okay, so if members can appreciate the context, the roundabout at the northern part of that aerial photo is kind of Waycock Cross roundabout. And then the site sits just to the south of Port Road, between the existing residential development and the pub and the hotel. And then, yes, residential development running down towards the south, but with the southern and eastern portions potentially left free of development. Bear with me a moment. So officers of the view currently, the site bears a reasonably logical relationship to the existing settlement and is located sustainably as set out in the report, such that there is merit for considering this site further through a public consultation as proposed in the recommendations. There is a raft of background and supporting work being carried out, including preliminary ecological surveys, transport work, landscape impact work, etc., and that would continue across the period of the consultation to inform the assessment of the site's suitability. Just moving briefly to Hayes Lane, which is the site is indicated, Mark, on page 15, I believe. Oh, I tell a lie, page 16, sorry. So this site here has previously been allocated as employment space. It sits opposite, as I mentioned earlier, the recently constructed council housing scheme, to the north. So previously allocated as employment space, but as the report sets out, it is considered at this time that there would potentially be merit in reallocating it for housing to consolidate the existing pattern of housing development in that part of the town. And given that we feel employment needs can potentially be met on other sites throughout the town, this could be allocated for 70 units. The Neptune Road site is the third of the 3 sites which is being put forward for consideration. That's indicated on page 18, Mark. That site was approved in outline for a hotel as part of the wider Barry waterfront redevelopment. But as set out in the report, at this time, there hasn't been a taker for it in the market, and the hotel opposite has permission for an extension. So in the context of pressing affordable housing need in Barry and considering what the market might be for a further hotel in that location, it's considered that there's merit in considering further reallocating this for housing, and particularly noting that the promoter is an affordable housing provider. So we will be looking at potentially 100% affordable housing, and it's been proposed for 40 units currently. The plan's a little grainy, but it's immediately to the north of Asda, so I think members should be familiar with that site's location. So just to wrap up, in summary, I would just emphasise at this time that the recommendations to the Cabinet report did not seek approval of these sites for inclusion within the deposit plan. Rather, it was for endorsement to carry out a public consultation exercise to consider further their appropriateness. So that mirrors the same exercise we went through with Cabinet and Scrutiny before consulting on the strategy last time. These sites remain consistent with the already approved strategy, and there is a clear identified need to replace the dwellings that would not be delivered at Argyle Lane, North East Barry. It's recognised that Northwest Barry site is an extension at the edge of the settlement, but as previously noted, it is a relatively logical kind of extension to the urban form of the town, and in principle it is no different to what was previously approved within the strategy at North East Barry at Argyle Lane, which also represented a greenfield extension to the town. It is proposed to commence a consultation exercise in mid-June, running for 4 weeks until approx mid-July, with an in-person event in the latter part of June, which would also serve as a placemaking event. So in addition to seeking the public and other stakeholders' views on kind of the principle of the development of the sites, also looking for views to inform our consideration of kind of how it would meet placemaking principles, how it would integrate and assimilate into the settlement. And that would be consistent with the other work that was done, the other similar placemaking events done with the other sites included in the strategy in Roos and St Athan and Dinas Powys. So then in terms of next steps, following that consultation exercise, a report of the responses would be prepared and presented to full council later in the year. Given the time that we're likely going to need to consider and respond to the input to that consultation, this may not be until the December full council. Obviously, there's recess, and actually, the lead-in and kind of reporting timeline for September council might be too tight. So we want to allow time to consider this properly. So we may be looking at towards the end of the year to report back on those responses, and then subject to what council decides at that meeting, we would then look to hopefully report and consult on a deposit plan in the first part of 2026. So I think I'll leave it there for now, Chair, and of course happy to answer any questions from members.
Thank you very much, Ian. That's really helpful, taking us through that in such detail. I know lots of people want to speak on this issue, but I'm going to bring in non-committee members first, so that we can hear from from non-committee members, and then I'll move on to committee members. So committee members, please bear with me. If you think I've missed you, I haven't. Councillor Hennessy, please, you wanted to speak on this issue?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Ian, can you bring up the picture, please, for Waycross again, specifically the layout?
I think that will be Mark who will do that.
Sorry.
Well, thank you, Mark. If you can do that.
What page was that again? Sorry, Ian.
The more detailed one was on page 15, and the red line plan was page 13. So it depends which one Councillor Hennessy wants.
15.
Right. Bear with me. Right. This one. Is it indicative master plan?
That's him.
Right. Okay. Is that coming up?
Not on my side.
Right. Let me bear with me. I'll try again now. Hopefully that might come up shortly.
That one will do, Mark. Ian, can you please tell me where the entrance is going to be for this development?
So
you can respond to that, please. Thank you.
Yes. So the entrance would be off Port Road, so not off the lane to the west, but it would be if you take the alignment of Port Road and then you come perpendicular down into the site, you can see like a dark green line which indicates kind of green infrastructure. There's a grey road just to the right of that, so essentially fairly centrally on the site frontage to Port Road is where it's shown. But just to note, it's indicative, and further work would be needed to determine what the most appropriate point of access would be. But almost certainly Port Road, not the lane to the west.
Right. So this is.
Sorry, Councillor Hennessy. Councillor Hennessy, through the chair.
Sorry, Chair.
Did you want to ask? Councillor Hennessy, do you want to ask another question?
Yes, I do. Sorry, Chair.
Please go ahead.
So this is my question to you, Ian. Port Road is probably one of the busiest roads in the Vale of Glamorgan. We have just had major roadworks done by having a new junction put in. You are looking to have astronomical delays on this road for people coming into Barry and going out of Barry. How can this plan be justified for that? I have major issues with this as one of the Roos Ward councillors, and I believe my other ward councillors will have the same issue with this, and so will Councillor Janice Charles. This is unacceptable.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to remind all councillors that the issue before us this evening is for this no decisions have been made. This is for a consultation, and obviously as members we'll be able to participate in that consultation. So thank you for your comments, Councillor. Ian, I don't know if you want to respond to those at this stage.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I'd echo what you say regarding the consultation, and just to emphasise that transport work is ongoing. So all of the sites that have already been included in the strategy or would be are subject to transport assessments, which are reviewed, and then that forms part of a kind of a strategic transport assessment that a consultant is doing for us, which will look at what the strategic impacts are, what the viability of different sites are, what appropriate mitigation is and where, and we look at the transport impacts and consider are they acceptable? Is there mitigation? If there's not mitigation, are the impacts on traffic acceptable in the balance of all the other things that we're trying to deliver, employment uses and housing, etc. So it's an iterative process. So the timeline for delivery of an LDP is such that we can't bottom out the fine detail of all of those points before determining whether to consult on a site. We need to look at a site in kind of in a rounded way and in principle, and think, could it have merit, and then continue that work across the consultation. So there is no decision made that this is or isn't, from an officer's perspective, acceptable from a transport or any other perspective. That work remains ongoing, and it's obviously it's clear that highways and traffic is going to be a major issue, and that's something that we would really welcome the public's opinions and perceptions on the existing situation and how they think it might affect that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. That's a really helpful clarification. Before I bring in committee members, were there any other non-committee members who joined us this evening who want to speak on this issue? No, in that case, Councillor Hooper, please. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ian, for the presentation. I talk on two of the sites, if I may. Neptune Road in the first instance. I'm just wondering, maybe in addition, in principle, I think this is a good idea. The land isn't being taken up clearly at the moment, and it's just a waste site. But there's also some land I understand it's owned by Asda, for more commercial units to the back of Asda. Clearly, we're having problems getting the commercial units let that are in the main area. And I just wonder whether there's opportunity to also, as part of this consultation, perhaps speak to Asda and see whether they're interested in any work to do something different with the site, particularly with regard to affordable or social housing. The second point is just regarding Waycott Cross, and hearing what Councillor Hennessy said. But there was no point. This site is previously, prior to my time as a councillor, I understand, been a candidate site for the LDP previously, and was withdrawn because of a number of considerations. I just want to make sure that those have been addressed this time. And I just want to make the point, and I made the point about Argyle Lane as well, but the suggestion that this is in proximity to Barry Town train station is, it's okay when you're going down the hill and you go, but coming back up, this is quite a trek, and it takes half an hour to get from one to the other. So I think that's slightly disingenuous, and therefore it doesn't necessarily fit with the principles before. So I think we're likely to just be creating another car-centric housing estate, and as we know, we've got a lot of those already, and it's something that wasn't part of the overall plan. So I'd welcome your comments on those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. I've certainly made a note of those comments and would suggest that that can be part of the feedback from this committee, that consideration should be given to those issues. But Ian, if there's anything that you want to add to that at this stage, please do.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, happy to. In respect to the first query, yeah, I'm happy that we can make contact with Asda. I think the key thing, as was the case with Argyle Lane, is deliverability. So if I believe Asda own the site adjacent, if they were not minded to release it for another use because they still hold aspirations of delivering something commercial there, then it wouldn't be appropriate to allocate it. I'm cautiously optimistic that behind the scenes there is movement with the existing constructed district centre. So if that could be a trigger for something happening on that site as well, and that obviously would be positive. But I'm certainly happy that we can engage with Asda on that point, just to have a conversation. On the second point, I wasn't involved in the previous LDP at the stage that site was withdrawn. I am not aware that it was withdrawn for kind of fundamental technical reasons which should prohibit it being considered now. I think it was a member decision at the time that they felt there were better options than that site. So I'm not aware of anything prohibitive about the site's history, which means we shouldn't be carrying out a consultation on it now. In terms of the train station, yes, I agree that probably travelling one direction would be probably slightly easier than another. We could never guarantee that all occupants of a site would walk or cycle to a train station. I think the important thing is that it's within proximity that residents have the opportunity to do so, and I think they would from here. It's not just about train stations; it's also about the availability of the other day-to-day services people need to live their lives. And we're not blessed with a great deal of obvious developable land right on the cusp of train stations, which would obviously be ideal. So we do need to look at what are the best options, bearing in mind we're in a growth area, bearing in mind we have affordable housing need. What are the best options for meeting that need? And even in instances where they're not closer to train stations than this, I don't think that in itself must prohibit the site. But I fully appreciate Councillor Hooper's points. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ian. Councillor Ernest, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to speak on the Sully side at Hayes Lane and Neptune Road. Looking at the report on page 17, it says that there was merit, or is merit, in continuing to protect the site, that is Hayes Lane, for employment, as it represents the next logical step for the growth of Atlantic trading estates. So we're actually giving away a site that could be used for employment, and bearing in mind it's not 1,000 yards away from a very large industrial factory, which is going to lose quite a considerable number of jobs, according to press reports. It does seem to me a little strange that we're giving up potential employment sites when clearly there's going to be a need for further or future employment in Barry. It's Barry stroke Sully, really. The other point, Chairman, if I jump quickly to Neptune Road, this site was put aside for a hotel and B1 offices as part of the wider Mixford strategic site. And again, whilst I recognise the fact that we need housing, we desperately need housing, we also, I think, could do, if it were the case, with a further hotel and offices, because there's a growing need for for employment, as I said a moment or two ago, and it seems to lose a site for a hotel is a pity. But it may well be that Ian has got good reasons why we should discount these two sites, with the possibility of losing jobs for the people of Barry. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Ian, I do come back in if you want to. I think you said very clearly that the issue around the Neptune Road site was that there hadn't been any interest expressed in developing a hotel there, and obviously the hotel that's already there has got expansion plans. Is there anything that you wanted to add in response to that?
No, I think that probably covers it. And yeah, on Hayes Lane, as I touched on, I think we're of the view that there is enough employment land in the area to make provision for the need, such that if this site could make a valuable contribution to affordable housing need, that could potentially, in the fullness of assessing it, that could potentially outweigh the benefits of employment land. But there's no decision on that yet. But those are the things we're weighing up. And I appreciate, like with many things in planning, it's trying to measure two things against each other, which aren't necessarily directly measurable, but we have to kind of try and use our judgment to say what we think outweighs the other. I think if we were really struggling for other employment opportunities in the area, then that would be something to consider as well. I think also the proximity of this site to the residential is another thing to bear in mind in terms of, are we likely to see employment uses come forward? Sometimes we see employment land struggle where potential occupiers feel that they may have their uses affected by the proximity of residents and likelihood of complaints and things like that. So a lot of things to consider, and it's certainly a reasonable point that Councillor Ernest raises that we need to think about.
Thank you very much, then. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Inucci Williams, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask really, I know I mentioned similar when we were looking at the Barry North site. It says how far or how long it would take to cycle to the nearest train station, but I thought it would be helpful instead, or as well as, because I think it's a fair old walk from the train station if you lived at the top of the Wake Up Cross site, whether that's the sort of thing we could include as well, because I drive, but if I was going to go for active travel, it would be on my feet rather than a bike. So I think it would be helpful to include both measurements, just so that people have a better idea as well of the distance.
Thank you for that suggestion, Councillor. Ian, I'll pick that up in my summary at the end in terms of the issues that committee have suggested should be considered as part of this process. Councillor Penn, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Brilliant. All I was going to say, Ian, was fully support any development having a public consultation. It's always worth getting the view of residents nearby, all residents of the Vale. My only thoughts are that we do have a massive shortage of affordable housing. and my sort of thinking is that it's about what we build. You know, we've got the RLDP that states where we might build. My views are what we build, and actually that the quality of any developments and the place you live does have a significant impact on life chances. If you grow up in a place where it's well designed, well thought out, with local amenities, that actually it does have beneficial impacts on your future life chances. And I'd like us to really think about what we build, personally, more than where, because they're already in the RLDP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Perry, please.
Hi, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I've still got a few questions which are sort of more general regarding this new LDP. And I'm still wondering what the carbon budget is for the strategic growth area as well as our LDP. And I'm wondering what the expected carbon footprint of development is of each of the new sites that's coming forward. These questions have not yet been answered. And in some ways that links on to what Elliot Penn has just said in some ways. Why is there a need for additional highway capacity when we urgently need to reduce the amount of travel in private cars? And that should be a key goal of our initiatives on the climate emergency, is reducing travel and reducing the use and ownership of private vehicles. And yet here we are, LDP, and we're talking about additional traffic. So straight away, there is a big problem with the LDP if we're talking about more car journeys as a result of more development. The UK has an affordability problem in housing. It's got an empty homes problem. It's got an empty buildings problem. It's got an Airbnb problem. It's got a second homes and third homes problem. It's got underutilization of homes problem. It's got scarcity of building materials problem. We've got a carbon environmental footprint of building materials problem. There are lots of problems we have, and build actually makes many of those problems worse and not better. So key of sustainability has to be that we use what we have already more efficiently. And none of the things that come out of the Welsh Government seem to be doing that. It's all about build. And enrich a few people, and the planet for the majority gets worse. And I agree with Councillor Hooper on the walkability of the railway station, and we need to put more thoughts into the bus services that serve Roos and serve the top part of Barry. And that needs to come before building, and it should have come before this site came forward. So already we're a little bit behind, and bus service should be every 20 minutes. I think in parts of the Vale, you get 6 buses a day, or 1 an hour. If you're lucky, you get 1 every 30 minutes. So there are huge problems, and I think really we're leaping ahead in the build phase when we need to think about the sustainability phase first. And I think we missed key parts of sustainable development. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to remind committee members that, as Ian has already made clear, there are no decisions that have been made around these sites. This has come before us this evening because there's a consultation. So I'll do my best to capture all of the comments that are being made. But Ian, a number of councillors have talked about the importance of accessibility, walking distance to the sites, whether or not the consultation can include walking distance from, for example, nearest railway or cycle routes, and also the sustainability issues. So, Ian, can you just clarify whether that information can be included within the consultation process, or indeed is already part of it?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Paragraph 428 refers to isochrone maps from the Northwest Barry site in respect to both walking distance and cycling. So yeah, that's covered in there. But if I've misunderstood what was asked for in that regard, then let me know and I can make sure that's included. Yeah, thanks, Chair.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Councillor Norman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ian. Very good report. And as I say, a lot of things have come up in discussion. But comment on something Councillor Perry brought forward, which is very much in the same vein as I've got. A lot of emphasis has been put on using the train stations when Barry has got quite a good bus service compared to the rest of the rural Vale. And I think having the one at especially the one at the top of Waycock Cross, I think would be a very good site for development. You've got Tesco's just up the road, and as I say, a bus service going down into town from there. And you've also got the schools on Port Road as well. So I think it seems to be an ideal site. As I say, it'd be interesting to listen to the rest of the comments coming up from the consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So I don't see any other hands, so I'll assume that nobody else wants to speak on this issue. So I'm just going to try and summarise. And I think there's probably one recommendation, and I will try to capture all the comments that committee's made, but please let me know if I miss anything. So the recommendation from committee is that as part of the consultation process, officers should talk to ASDA about the use of the site, the land that they own, that officers should check if there were indeed any historic issues that prohibited the use of the Waycock Cross site when it was previously considered for housing development, and if so, that those issues clearly would need to be addressed if they've not already been addressed. That we would ask that officers note the concern of committee about the potential loss of employment sites. But at the same time, I think it's fair to say that committee recognises the need to balance that with the fact that there is a housing shortage. And we do recognise that officers have clarified that no firm decisions have been made yet. And this will inevitably be a difficult and challenging balancing act. That committee also thinks it would be helpful to make clear walking distance to sites, specifically Waycock Cross site, but any of these three sites that eventually fall within the plan, and that as part of the consultation process, members of the public should also be made aware not just of walking distance, but also distance in terms of access to railway stations and bus routes. And finally, that committee recognises the importance of sustainability of developments in terms of both quality and also carbon footprint. And any information that can be shared as part of the consultation process in relation to those issues, we also think would be very helpful. Can I check whether anybody thinks I've missed anything?
Can I just confirm as well, Chair, is that one overall recommendation, or are we breaking them down into smaller recommendations then to go just as one overall recommendation for the consultation?
Yes, it's one recommendation that officers, that feedback from committee should be considered as part of the consultation process.
Lovely. Thanks, Chair, for confirming.
Thank you. Good. I see no hands, in which case we will move on to agenda item 7, which is the Forward Work Programme 2025-26 for this new place scrutiny committee. And Mark is going to take us through it, Mark Thomas from Democratic Services. So thank you, Mark. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair and Committee. I'll just give a sort of brief outline, or as brief as I can, of the key points of the Forward Work Programme schedule for 2025 and 2026. To begin, please can I point out the typo on page 10 of Appendix A. referring to the committee meetings title. Now, this refers to Live Well. Well, obviously, it should refer to this place committee. So apologies for that. Just please be assured that the rest of the document refers to and deals with the place-specific reports and other items for the committee. I will amend that title prior to publishing and for future instalments of the work programme. This report requests members to consider the draft annual forward work programme items and topics of investigatory, i.e. task and finish review for 2025-26 and the new place scrutiny committee. A draft forward work programme schedule for 25-26 is, as I've said already, attached to Appendix A, and members of the committee are asked to consider the contents for approval. In addition, the committee is asked to note the remit of the Place Scrutiny Committee as shown in paragraph 1.2 of this report, which also shows the remits of the other new reformed committees. A revised and reformatted work programme schedule has been devised by Democratic Services, and this provides a breakdown of reports anticipated to be considered by the Place Scrutiny Committee over the forthcoming months stroke municipal year, which will be May 25 to April 2026. It's also designed to indicate topics of deep dive investigatory task and finish review. In addition, it outlines a new mechanism where reports of information and noting will be shared with members electronically. The new work programme also indicates those topics that will be considered via members' briefing outside the formal committee meeting settings. This has been devised by Democratic heads of service and other relevant officers. Also, please note that the work programme schedule is a proposed list of items for consideration and may be subject to change depending on prevailing circumstances. On task and finish, a committee may identify an area of work which would benefit from a deeper dive to explore the issue further. These will be in addition to formal committee meetings and facilitated by Democratic Services, with topics initially identified at the start of the year when this committee is identifying and agreeing its forward work programme. Task and finish will leverage the expertise of officers, partners, wider stakeholders, alongside evidence and insight from the people of the Vale of Glamorgan. Investigative scrutiny is to hold the Cabinet and officers accountable on specific topics while proactively shaping the Council's policy direction. Reports and recommendations from these smaller groups will be fed back to the Cabinet member, Scrutiny Committee and Cabinet for consideration to help in shaping its future policy direction, ensuring that decisions are informed by a broad range of perspectives and expertise. More details on the potential makeup of such task and finish groups, including political balance and cross-party work, as well as the group's discretion as to how they operate in terms of ways of working, etc., and to agree a meeting frequency and time, can be found at paragraph 2.9 to the report. The proposed timeline guidance for task and finish, which may be subject to change depending on the scope of work, is outlined in paragraph 2.10. I've also have a brief slide to share with the committee, which also highlights the process for the coming months, which I'll share with you just now, if you can please bear with me for a second. I'll just share my screen now. Bear with me a second. Hopefully, everyone can see that. Hopefully,
we can, Mark. Yeah,
lovely.
we can.
Thank you very much. This gives a brief sort of outline or process of how we're going to look in the near future at setting up the task and finish for this committee and obviously for the other ones. So for the May committee meeting, committee consider the forward work programme and suggestions for potential task and finish topics collectively. Democratic Services Officer collates a list of topics and undertakes a light scoping stroke feasibility exercise based on those suggestions. When we come into the sort of June period before July's meeting, we look at the outcomes of the scoping feasibility exercise, share with the committee. That'll be circa 3 to 4 weeks. At July's meeting, the committee then would subsequently agree task and finish topics for the municipal year, order of priority of those, and provisional memberships at the meeting. And then we would start the commencement of the task and finish with immediate effect, and go into the key parts around that. I'll just stop sharing my screen. Hopefully that's fairly self-explanatory, but the members are subsequently requested to consider and approve the proposed scrutiny committee work programme schedule, which is attached to Appendix A, and to also consider areas that they may require deep dive investigatory scrutiny by task and finish review group. So obviously already this evening we've looked at one potential task and finish item around the flying rings issue, which is going to be addressed in an alternative way. On Appendix A, we've also got a potential suggestion from housing colleagues about a deep dive into tenant survey, but obviously there's an opportunity tonight and in the coming weeks for members to consider other topics they may want to bring out as a task and finish item and to be looked at in a deeper way. So that concludes my sort of brief outline of the report and its implications. I'll now hand back to the chair for questions from the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was really helpful. Thank you. So committee, hopefully you've all had an opportunity to look at the papers for this evening. So I'm going to break this down. I'm going to suggest that we start by looking at the forward work programme and then come on to talk about task and finish. So are there any questions or comments around the forward work programme? Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of omissions, perhaps. This committee in its previous guise took papers from Cardiff Capital Region, particularly on Aberthaw and the emerging developments there. Doesn't seem to be in the programme this time. I wonder where it fits. Also, the parking review that's currently going on Barry Island, it seems like that should be coming back to this committee. There's been some consultation with residents, so I'd like to be able to see that come back to this committee. And Councillor William has just messaged me because he still can't seem to get into this to be able to speak. And he says there's a need for a coastal erosion review, particularly given the amount of stones that seem to be appearing in his own survey of the beach on Whitmore Bay. So perhaps those three seem to be missing. I'll come back with other things later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hooper. Mark, I don't know if you can address those or whether Colin is still on the call and wants to pick those up.
Certainly from my end, Chair, I can only apologise that those have been omitted. Like I say, this is a bit of a moving feast in terms of the forward work programme. Obviously, things do change, but I will ensure that those will be added onto the work programme. And I don't know if Colin wants to come on now, but if not, I can speak to officers outside this meeting to see where we're at with those, and if we can include those for future reports or other sort of means of letting committee members know about them.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Following on from that, Chair, I'll pick up the coastal erosion review directly and with Councillor William. And I know we had Clive Moon fairly recently to committee at the beginning of the year doing an annual review, but I'll highlight the concerns to him this week, and we'll reach out to Councillor William, as I mentioned, and see whether it's a full report and review, and when the next annual one is due, and I can report that back. And in terms of the car parking reviews, etc., obviously there is the cabinet reports due to go in the very near future, and I guess they may be referred down to the committee then at that point.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll wait to hear whether or not those issues are going to come as references from Cabinet. But of course, we can always call them in as committee members. So they can then be considered by committee. So we will make sure that one way or the other, Councillor Hooper, we're able to address those issues.
Just
Mark,
to mention,
come back in, yeah.
sorry, Chair, apologies. Just to mention, there are some references to car parking in the forward work programme, but obviously the more specific ones that Councillor Hooper has raised is not in there. So we'll make sure they are appended to the work programme going forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ernest, please.
Chairman, yeah, I believe Councillor Champion has emailed either yourself or Democratic Services in respect of a wish to look more closely at working with businesses in Cowbridge. I think he was concerned that there's not been perhaps as much as Councillor Champion would wish liaison with businesses, but maybe Councillor Driscoll is slightly more up. There was an email earlier this evening, but I've not had time to totally absorb it. So I'm speaking off the cuff, not for the first time. So did you have a copy of that email, Chairman, or not?
Yes, just to reassure you. So at the moment, we're focusing on the forward work programme, which is the planned agenda for the committee with the reports that will come across the year. I'm bringing us on to talk about task and finish group, and Councillor Champion, Councillor Champion and I have been in touch about his suggestion around task and finish, and I'm going to make sure that that's included.
That's absolutely fine. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you. So anything else from anybody in relation to the forward work programme? No? Okay, so let's come on to talk about task and finish. And as Mark has already outlined, these are short, deep dives into issues that committee feels they want to take a greater look at. We've already had the suggestion around tenant and leaseholder participation strategy. As Councillor Ernest referenced, Councillor Champion has also suggested that there should be a task and finish group looking at council support for high streets. It wasn't just in Cowbridge, it was high streets in general within the placemaking agenda. So are there any other suggestions around task and finish groups? And Mark, I'm conscious that councillors, committee members might want a little bit of time to think about this. So do we have to bring all those issues forward this evening, or is there an opportunity for committee members to contact you in the next week or so with suggestions that you can then bring back to us to consider collectively in July?
Yeah, I definitely, Chair. I think obviously there's a lot for members to take in. We've obviously had quite a busy agenda tonight as well. So I do appreciate that members might want more time to consider suggestions and matters. So yeah, by all means, they can get in touch with myself and obviously copy you in, and we can put that as part of the process of considering task and finish items going forward.
Excellent. I'm conscious we've got a really broad agenda, committee, and I don't want people to feel, if they don't think of something tonight or haven't had an opportunity to absorb all the information to date, that they miss out on that. So Councillor Hooper, I'll bring you in and then suggest a way forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just checking in to see, so if you take Councillor Champion's points, it's a shame he's not on the call, actually. I've noticed a number of councillors seem to have dropped off quite early this evening. Because there's a lot of work being done by the council on placemaking and town centre initiatives. There's 2 reports in our standard work programme that I think they talk about the same thing with regard to the plan for neighbourhoods and the long-term plan for towns. I think they're both two sides of the same coin, actually. But are we just accepting that we're going to do this work on town centres? Because there seems to be some duplication. There's a lot of people working on it. I don't know, how do we decide these things?
Yeah, I mean, if it helps, Councillor Hooper, my view is that it would be really, and it's just my view because this is for committee to decide, but my view is that it's really helpful for us to focus task and finish work in areas where we feel we can add value. I agree that it's not helpful to duplicate work that's already happening. And it's also not helpful for us to put time into issues where perhaps there might not be a need for task and finish group because council and officers can simply get on with things. And we've already had that conversation tonight in relation to the flying rings. So this is very new for all of us, but this is very much, I think, about added value, deep dive into issues. The Forward Work programme provides us with a broad framework around what we're going to be considering across the year, and are there any things already on our agenda where we feel, as I say, we can add value through a deep dive. So no, we're not making a decision tonight that these two suggestions are going to be our task and finish groups. What we will do is we will, if committee members have suggestions around areas for task and finish, if they can email those to Mark and copy me in as chair. And then what officers will do is a very brief scoping around those and bring them back in July. And then collectively, what we will do as committee is decide whether we want to take any of those, and if so, where we want to start. So Mark, I hope my understanding is correct, but do tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I was just going to echo that, Chair. Basically, at the moment, we're just collating ideas and suggestions from members. We'll do some background work around them in terms of sort of a light scoping exercise. So obviously the considerations and the concerns that, for example, Councillor Hooper raised about possible duplication or things that are already being dealt with by the council at some level, we'd look at that, and those suggestions might not be feasible as a task and finish, but might come as a future report either already in the work programme or something we can add. So this is just at the moment to get ideas from members and to look at those outside the meeting and then report back to the meeting subsequently. I hope that helps, Chair and Committee.
It does. Thank you for the clarification. Councillor Hooper, I hope that addresses your concern. Do come in.
Thanks, Chair. It does address concern. It also raises another opportunity, and perhaps we should be looking at things like the risk profile of the council to aid us in the areas that relate to the place scrutiny responsibilities, to make sure not only we doing things that we think we can add value, but the council actually need our support in. So there are a number of issues that are red rated, different ratings that. Sorry about that. Perhaps we need to give some thought to as opposed to others. So maybe that should be part of our consideration as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hooper. Do please write to us with that so that we capture the detail of that, and that can be something that committee can consider next month. Mark?
Sorry, Chair, only come in briefly. I do believe Kirsty Mitchell, one of our tenant representatives, did have a hand up earlier. I don't know, Kirsty, if you wanted to raise a question or a comment.
Please go ahead, Kirsty.
Evening, Chair. Evening, everyone. I was just wondering about the possibility of a task and finish group regarding more accessibility onto the beach. I love Barry. I'm a wheelchair user, but I just can't get on the beach, and to see. I don't know whether this has been done before.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. We definitely will note that, Mark, and consider that as one of the issues that we look at next July. I've also had a suggestion that we might want to look at things like refuse on the beaches, or do something around resorts in general. So I think there's lots of scope. We've got a really exciting, challenging agenda. We're not going to be able to cover it all, but it will be really useful in July to have a good discussion about things we can get into in more detail. Councillor Penn, please.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry to come in on the end. Thoughts on task and finish? I know you said email Mark. I was just thinking that we've got, we looked at the some of the proposals in the RLDP and some of the emissions, you know, we've got quite a few allocated house building sites. From my personal perspective, I know that the price of building materials in the last sort of 5 years has gone up quite a lot. Working with on developments that we have admin over, working alongside possibly other councils on procurement. You know, the more you buy, the cheaper you can get things. So it'd be really good to sort of work with other councils that have building projects on buying certain materials to try and lower the prices. With the cost of everything going up, anything we can save on, you know, even from the smallest thing, it all adds up. So that would be something I'd like us to sort of look at, if that's a possibility. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I suspect that if we're talking about a task and finish group to look at the feasibility of regional procurement, I think that's probably more an issue for the resources scrutiny rather than this scrutiny. I'm not sure that would fall within our remit, but Mark, can you advise us?
Potentially, Chair, because procurement has traditionally been within corporate performance and resources, and obviously resources. But I do understand there are elements that are going to cross over from the different scrutiny committees, particularly with stuff such as housing and building materials. So I'll consult with colleagues, and you know, we can look at that. But obviously, it might be something for perhaps potentially the resources committee to consider if it's not appropriate for this committee, or there might be some work between the committees that can be done on it. So I'll take a look, and I'll come back to you obviously on that.
Brilliant. It was just, you know, thinking with my day job hat on, you know, anything I can say for my customers is always welcomed. And, you know, the council's on a much bigger scale that actually we could, if it's a different scrutiny, they could look at actually cutting costs on materials, which could make a big difference to our overall budgets. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands on this, so I'm going to bring us to the recommendations for this agenda item. Recommendation 1, that the committee considers and agrees items for its forward work programme schedule for 25-26, including deeper dive, task and finish review investigations. Sorry, Councillor Penn, your hand is still up. Did you want to come back in, or is that an historic hand? Yeah, great, thank you. So subject to agreement that the emissions which have been addressed, i.e. around the CCR Aberthor route site, outcome of the parking review and coastal erosion review, that we would like clarification as to whether or not we will be receiving reports from Cabinet that will form part of our forward work programme in relation to those items. But subject to that, is committee content to agree the forward work programme? And if so, can I have a proposer? Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Iannucci-Williams.
Happy to second.
Lovely, thank you. And we've already agreed a way forward in relation to our task and finish group, so that doesn't form part of that recommendation for committee. And second recommendation, that the remit of the place scrutiny committee be noted, and I move that we note it. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Hooper.
I thought someone might beat me. I gave them time as well. Happy to
You did, Councillor. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, an omission on my part, actually. So I should have said earlier, reference was made to Councillor Champion leaving earlier. Councillor Champion did actually send his apologies and notice in advance that he would have to leave tonight's committee early. So he didn't leave for any other reason. He did send his apologies in advance. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. I don't have any other urgent items And it's just for me to remind the committee that our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, the 15th of July at 6 o'clock. And can I thank you all for your attendance and your contributions this evening. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everybody.